What just happened? In the early hours of January 3, 2026, the United States launched a large-scale military operation against Venezuela, including airstrikes around Caracas and a rapid ground action to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. Both were taken out of Venezuela and transported to the U.S., where they have been indicted on charges including narco-terrorism and drug trafficking, and are awaiting trial in federal court in New York. The operation, announced by President Donald Trump, was framed by the U.S. as part of its long-running campaign against drug trafficking and narco-terrorism. And Trump initially stated that the U.S. would temporarily run Venezuela until a safe transition could be achieved. However, senior U.S. officials later clarified that Washington does not intend to govern Venezuela day to day, though it plans to use leverage over Venezuelan oil and political direction to influence the country's future. 2. Immediate political fallout. With Maduro removed, Venezuela's Supreme Court named Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as interim president, but she rejects the U.S. operation, calls Maduro the legitimate leader, and demands proof of life for him and his wife. The domestic political situation in Caracas remains fragile, with uncertainty about leadership, divided military loyalties, and civil fears after explosions and power outages in the capital. Regional and international reactions. The U.S. move has been highly controversial globally. Neighboring Latin American governments like Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Colombia, Uruguay, and others condemn the strikes as violations of Venezuelan sovereignty and international law, urging peaceful diplomatic resolutions instead of military action. The United Nations, including Secretary General Antonio Guterres, called attention to legal issues and dangerous precedents set by unilateral military intervention without UN authorization. Major powers like China and Russia strongly criticized the U.S. operation, with Beijing calling for Maduro's release and rejecting the idea of any nation acting as a global judge, and Moscow offering solidarity with Caracas. U.S. domestic voices are split, with some American leaders supporting action against Maduro's regime, while others, including prominent critics, argue the operation was illegal, unwise, and destabilizing. 4. Broader context and risks. This marks one of the most direct U.S. military actions in Latin America in decades and represents a major escalation from earlier phases of tension, which included sanctions, naval operations, targeting alleged trafficking, and diplomatic isolation of Caracas. Critics warn that such an intervention risks long-term instability for Venezuela, broader regional tensions, and erosion of international norms governing sovereignty and the use of force. In short, the U.S. has just carried out a rare, bold military operation in Venezuela that resulted in the capture and extradition of President Maduro on U.S. charges. This has created a power struggle in Venezuela, set off global condemnation and legal debate, and opened a highly uncertain chapter in Western Hemisphere geopolitics.